All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rhonda Burkhart from HCC, and this morning we're going to be covering our fiscal year-end checklist. I'll be doing the USAS, and Tanya will be doing the USPS in about an hour or so. And so we may have a brief break. We'll see how I do. I'll try and get done so everybody can have a little bit of a break in between the USAS and the USPS. If you're staying here for both. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's share that one over there. Okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead and I'll just, as a reminder, where the recordings will be. If you need to view this again, there's a lot of material that will be on the hccitc.org website. And if you go under Finance, in the Software, Links, and Training, it's under the HCC training recording. And then we will put it right here at the top under the, right above this one that's highlighted in green there for the new contract. So we'll put it right up there so that you can view that. All right. There are a few people, I know there's some payroll meetings going on in Columbus and all that. So we're recording that. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in to our fiscal year end checklist. We're going to cover this and kind of look at where it is, some of the details are in the test instance. So for your pre-closing procedures, you'll have the central office square footage. If you have recently relocated your central square office or your central office, then you might want to take a look at this or just kind of review it as part of your steps for closing the year. So that's under the core organization. So that will be here and down here at the bottom. You just edit that and then you can enter a number. And then your ITCRRN should already be in there. Next will be the building profile. If you've added any buildings, if you've closed them, there's a lot of construction projects going on. You might want to review those. Those are located under periodic in the building profile. And so you create that. Then you'd also enter your transportation percentage and your lunchroom percentage and save that. If you have any that, like you have an old building you're replacing, you would delete the old building and replace it with a new one. Then if you want to report, you can either, I think, get it from the report manager and the district building information report, or you can just get it from the grid. You could run it straight from the grid. Get it like that. Or you can go into right here, right there. I'll just kind of check mark that. You could get that and you can generate that. Right, like that. So either one of those will work. Next, you'll want to run the VAL Act, formerly known as VAL Act, the account validation report under the report manager. That's there as well. To make sure there's no invalid accounts, you'd want to take care of those before uploading your financials before closing the year to help eliminate the level 1 and level 2 errors. So that there's a screenshot of how that is, and then once you'd run for true, second time you'd run for false. If you do need to inactivate your account, is there a question? Anita, do you have a question?
No.
Okay, let me mute you then. Okay. If you have accounts that need inactivating, you could either use mass change or mass load. So you can filter your grid. Let's see if I can get this a little bit larger for the screenshot. So you can see, like for this one, I went into core accounts, hit the expenditure tab, filtered for like the fives for the funds. And so if I want anything under the 9024, then it will give me that. Here there's an example of ones that are fiscal year 21. I also filtered for those that are true because I want to inactivate them. So I don't want the ones that are already inactivated. And then I added in the zeros because you don't want anything with account balances in there. And then you would hit the mass change and select the inactivate account, load definition. If you don't have that, please let us know. We'll be glad to upload that for you. You would select the execution radio button. Now, before you do anything, you'd want to run a report just to validate that all the accounts that you're going to do, because you can only see a few here. You want to make sure you check through every single one of those to make sure that you really do want to inactivate those accounts. And it's nice to save that also for like an audit report, just kind of maybe in your year-end file. You can say, inactivating accounts, or these are the accounts I inactivated, just so that you have a record of that. So after you've validated that and you're sure you want all of those inactivated, you can go ahead and submit mass change, and that will change all of the accounts which are listed in your grid from active to inactive. I'm going to go back to the regular view here. All right. The other way to do it is you can hit the report in an Excel accounts. So for example, in expenditure. So let's see if they have any 90/20s. They don't have any. Not in this one. Okay. So we'll say there's a selection of accounts that you want to do, maybe the 500s you want to look at. And then let's see if we can find this. Oh, there's like 9911s. We'll just pick on the 9911s. Say if we want all of these, you could run a report and then use the Excel field names. And then you would get a report that way. And then before you upload, just contact us just to make sure all the headers are correct. And then you would go into and you would change active from true to false. So you'd go into the mass load, into the expenditure account, choose that file, make sure it's in CSV format, and load those up, and then that would change those. All right, so the next thing you want to do is run the SSCT OPU listing, and that is, you can get that under the report manager as well. Report, you can get that. And then just review your OPUs and double check your IRNs, and that's all correct. Make any changes as needed. Okay, and that's going to be under right here. Or if you want to make any changes, then you can make any changes there. Note which is your central office. And then the report is right there. This is DT Alpha listing. So that will nice report to list those right there. Okay, and it notes which one is central office. Okay. So the other things that you want to do is your budgeting scenarios. Contact us if you need some assistance with that, and we'll be glad to help you work with your scenarios and your proposed amounts to get your budgets established for fiscal year 26. Some districts do it before, some do it after the end of the year. Then there's maintenance of effort. You'll want to make sure that you run that to make sure that you're at the 90% threshold. And then you'll also want to close out all your purchase orders. I've already been contacted by a few districts that want to get those closed out for the end of the year and the steps to do that. There are two reports you could use. You can use the outstanding purchase order with zero remaining encumbrance just to get the zero balance ones closed out. Or you can use the canned purchase order detail report and select the status as outstanding. So if you don't do that, you could end up with some account. This is an example of an expenditure account that has a carryover encumbered amount. So if you don't want that, then you'll want to close out any purchase orders associated with that. If you need a specialized report to find out which purchase orders that is, I'll be glad to help you with that, establish that report so you can find out which ones those are. Here is an example of the screenshot here with the canned purchase order report. So you go down report, you go below, it's not report manager, you go below that light blue line down to where that purchase order detail report is. You select that, and then you'll want to select the status as outstanding. And below that, we have ways to close purchase orders. And even if you have very old ones where the balance is zero, you can actually do a canceling purchase order where the invoice, the canceling invoice, has a zero balance, and that won't show up on your payables or anything. So you can do that as a way to close those old ones out. There's another couple of ways to do that. You can, if it's the last invoice is in the current open period or just an open period, then you can go in there in that invoice and change the partial to a full. It's over all the way on the right side, and there's a button that will say full. You just hit that. We can assist you with that if you need that. There's a little screen shot down right below there, and under the action it says full, and it changes the status from partial to full, and then that will also close it out. You also want to review any old outstanding disbursements or checks that have not cleared the bank yet. So if left outstanding, we have the procedure to reconcile those and take care of those in the new fiscal year if you have to do that. We've got a guide for that. But if you can take care of it before the end of the year, that helps. One less thing for the auditors to, pick on. And we also have, if you're establishing your new accounts, especially for things like grants, where the FCCs roll to the next year, you can go into for account, cash account, view that, don't edit it, view it, and then there's a mass add button here. And then you come up with this next screen. So like the old one was 9025, the new one would be 9026, then you'd submit, and it will create all related cash, appropriation, revenue, and expenditure accounts for that. As an alternative, you could mass load those. You could download them the same way with the Excel format in the. So if you're going to do that, we'll pick on the 9011s again. So, 911s. Just take that. And you could make a report and you download again in that Excel field name. And then when you download that, say you're going to make it a different, you'd have the file and then you just change the SDC. And then you could just load those back in with a CSV file. We can assist you with that as well. So you might want some accounts, but not others. That would be a good reason why you'd want to do that. All right. So if you are creating your new requisitions and purchase orders for the new fiscal year, which a lot of districts are doing as well, you can create your July posting period. And you want to make that open and not current, because if you make it current, then it changes your balances for the beginning of the fiscal year and also the beginning of the period. So you would want to leave it in June, but just make July current. So in your core posting period, create July of 2020, not current. Don't put the current, and create that, and that will create that period. Then requisitions can be entered. So June is now the current period. Ranges up there. So you also want to make sure that all your open requisitions for fiscal year 25 have either been converted to POs or deleted. So then you go through with the month-end closing as you normally do. A lot of districts do their cash reconciliation on Excel, and but for this purpose, you need to actually do it in redesign as well. It's under your periodic cash reconciliation. So you'd have to create that, and you just add in your descriptions here. So maybe like this. There. Okay. That's how you add them, add your account. Any adjustment, your outstanding checks would be in here. Any CPs, other investments, any petty cash, all that. And then it fills in your fund balance. So you just want to make sure that your entered balance and your fund balance is the same. If you do this on Excel, you can just basically copy down where you have in Excel in the different fields, and then just make sure there's balance at the end. And then you'd save that. Okay. And then you can just print that out. And then continuing your step, you'll want to do your cash summary and your financial detail. You can do your financial detail for the current period if you're in June. and just compare those month to date totals just to make sure they're identical. Run any reports which you would want for the end of the month or the end of the fiscal year if those are not in the file archive. This is also a good time to add any reports which you would want. We can assist you with getting those uploaded into the file archive. It's just kind of like a report bundle, and then we could add that. That report could be added every single month that you close if you would like that, or we can do them specifically for the fiscal year end. All right. And then in your fiscal year end closing, under your periodic, the extra steps that you'd need, you were talked about the cash reconciliation and how that has to be completed for EMIS upload. And then the federal assistance summary is not required for the EMIS extract. A lot of districts, they had recently taken that away and then they brought it back. Recently, as in, I think it was about a year or two ago, they did that. And then there was a big, insistence that it still be there. So they put that back. And so if you're doing that for other purposes, then you'll want to do the summary ahead of the detail. And in the federal assistance detail, you can either clone or create those records. All right. And then the next step is the civil proceeding. So pretty much anything under the periodic. So like your cash reconciliation, your building profiles, your civil proceedings, those are the types of things that are going to be in your extract that you pull out. And then the SIF is going to pull out like your accounts and your OPUs. A good way to remember how it's split out. Civil proceedings, if you don't have any civil proceedings, you can just put in like a blank. It's a, like 2025 for your fiscal one. I just put NAs in there, just kind of like that. If you don't have anything, if you do have civil proceedings, then you want to put that in. Now, this is the big highlight. Okay, I'm doing my jazz hands to make sure that in your system configuration, in the EMIS SOAP service configuration, that has been updated to 2025. System configuration, EMIS SOAP service. Okay, it's a demo instance. It doesn't have it. So you'd want to make sure that's 2025 and save that so that when it pulls the file, it pulls the right amounts. Then under the extract menu, you'll want to select the EMIS to generate the extract file, which is an SEQ file for the data collector. And then when you do that, there's separate instructions, which you can contact us for assistance for. That is under the extract and the EMIS. And you just make sure, yeah, it'd be fiscal year 25. It flipped to 26 because I created July for posting my rec. And then you would just generate that file, and then you get that as an SEQ in the download. So we also have some dates here. So for the financial collection, it's available 6/5, through, I have to go to the 30th though, through 8/30. So, and then the 5-year forecast is that's the second to last one here, is May 31st. That's coming up. So if you haven't filed your 5-year forecast, you have until May 31st to get that accomplished. All right. So when you close, let's see, there we are, right there, closing fiscal year for the period. So if you haven't created July already, you'll want to create July. All right. So you create your July and then make sure that June is your current period because you might have reports which have like beginning of the month balances. Like if you have a financial detail that's current period only, then that will have your beginning of the month balance. So then you will close out June and make sure that you have June as your current period to close that out. Also, if you have, at the end of the month, sometimes we see districts, they haven't closed their previous periods. Make sure you close all of those first. And then you'll want to make sure that, June is your current period. And then you would close June, and that will give you this notification. You're going to close fiscal year 25, and you hit OK. This is going to take a little while, so you might want to plan ahead when you're closing out June for the fiscal year end, and maybe, oh, I've got a meeting or I'm going to lunch or something like that, and do it then because as you can see, it takes a while. And honestly, this is like, there's no data in this period. There's actually no data in the entire year because I was updating, so we actually have it in the current period because these used to have really old dates in them. So this is going to take a while to do, and you want to make sure that it's all done. And even when this goes away, you'll want to go into your file archive to make sure that all the reports are done. You'll want to make sure that all the jobs have been completed. A lot of districts have many jobs in their report bundles to complete and in their job scheduler. So you want to make sure all of those are completed and done before you change this June as your current period. You'll want to leave it there until everything is done because again, it will change up. Okay, so that's all done. Utilities, like we go to our file archive. So you'd want to make sure that that's all done and completed. You've got monthly reports, fiscal year report archive. It doesn't have any because it's a test instance. And if you have any other items that are out there and in your job scheduler, if you have any extra, scheduled jobs, you'll want to make sure that that has been completed. So just double check that. All right. So now you're closed for June and you're ready to go on to the new fiscal year. The first thing you'd want to check, before we go on, you can reopen June. So there is a rule that will prevent the opening of a closed posting period, but as long as that's not enabled, so you could do it. I think we can inactivate the rule, so we can disable that. So you can reopen that if you need to and make any changes that are needed. And then, so if payroll, like you have a district that, you've been closing the fiscal year, but yet, maybe you have a fifth payroll date for, the 5th of July, then payroll has sent some things to USAS. Now you won't be able to see that until you close out June. So if you have a July 5th payroll date. So then the first thing you'd want to do is go into your pending transactions to see, so like something here, there's a payroll there. So if you want to post that, then you go in there and you post it. I'm not going to post it at the moment. All right. So that's the first thing you need to do is double check that. If you are a district that numbers your POs, you start it with the fiscal year. So you would need to, for the 26, you'd need to get that created. If you've done those early, you need to make draw a line in the sand to when the fiscal year 25 purchase orders are done and the 26 are done. Like we're going to stop 25 here. We're going to start 26 there. So there is a system configuration for your transactions for your highest purchase order number. So it would currently be like 25 and then 9s, and then you'd want to update it to change the 5 to a 6 so that it could go up into that 26 level on the purchase orders. And then when you convert your first requisition, you'll want to make sure that you label it as 26001. So, we can work with that together. Just give us a call. We'll be glad to look at that, either to change that configuration or make sure your first converted requisition has the correct number. All right. After the first one, they should flow in the sequence with a 26 numbering system. All right. If you have, under your account filters, if you have filters in there with grants and you use the SDC to filter that out, maybe you don't want to see all the years, maybe you're only seeing like 1 or 2 years, you'll want to update your account filters. There is a report. I'm not sure if it's in the instance. Yes, it is. This one right here, this account filters report with filter. And if you run that, it's a great report. It lists, this one I've got going in Excel. I can put it in PDF. And it's really nice. It tells you what the filter is and what the items are and the accounts are that are being filtered. So right here, you can see this. They've got a bunch of nonsense for their filter names. So just like the first one, you can see what the filter is. You can see the transaction indicator is 00 for cash, 02 for expenditures, 03 for revenue. So here it's just filtering out. If you had that in a report, it would be filtering for all 300 funds for your student activities that are 9523. So here's an example. Oh, I think I'm going to need to change this SEC in my account filter. I'll need to go into that and edit that and update it to what it should be. All right, account filters, purchase order numbering, also requisitions. If you are a district that uses a fiscal year within your requisition number and you have users that have that, then you would want to update those particular users that have that. So here is a sample. I'm going to blow this up again so we can see it a little easier. Okay. So this one had this filter for this user, and so we're going to have to go in and edit that and change that to 26. Now, they're restricted, so if you wanted them to see more than just for that year, you can do a comma after the TS26 and just put TS, and then they'd see everything, but their requisition numbers would start with TS26. Okay, back. All right. The fiscal year, the auditor state reports, Um, we've already done that. It's just a year-to-year job that flows, and we've already scheduled that for you. So those will be sent to the Auditor of State. Here are the reports that are sent. Okay. And then if you're a web gap district, then there is another extract that you would need for the gap. That's under extract, gap. You'd select your fiscal year and submit that, and that creates a file, and then you would send that file to whoever submits that on the web gap. All right. In the new fiscal year, you're going to need to do your certification report. There. Then your amended certificate and all of those. And there's some details on that about, what's required to submit to the county auditor at the beginning of the fiscal year. Any changes need to be submitted as well. And then this is another reminder about the account filters. We tend to find a lot of things with the account filters because they're kind of tucked away in their own little closet there, and districts don't. It's not something that's like it doesn't have a little, it's not a fire until somebody says it's a fire type thing. Like, I can't see this account. You have to review account filters. So, and then again, this is talking about future requisitions, which we've discussed about opening up July and then creating those requisitions. You can put attachments on your requisitions. And then if you're interested in the requisition approval workflow, we can set that up. There aren't too many districts that have that. But if you were interested in that, we can do that as well. And then this is always seems to be a discussion. We always get a couple of tickets on this, the account payable report. So this lists items which have been received in the current fiscal year, but have been paid for in the next. So you're always going to have a few invoices. It's like there's always a lag of some sort, not as much with, a lot of things being sent over the email, and there's less postal lag, but there are some that have that where you would get the invoice or something was received in, either May, June, usually June, and then it's not paid for until July or possibly even after. There's invoices that go off in the mail and all that. So you'll want to mark on your invoices the receive date, and then the payable report will note items that are paid in the new fiscal year. So here's an example of that where, let's get this a little bigger again. Okay, so here's an example of an item that was received in May, but it wasn't paid until July. And so that is what is on this report. So that's why it's on there, and kind of the same thing below there. These are the items that are listed, and that's something that the gap auditors always like to see. So, and that's about it. So do I have any questions? Does anybody want to go over something again? I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so I can look at questions or comments. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Not seeing anything in the chat. All right, and so now we have time. If you're staying for the next part, then we'll have a bit of a break until Tanya starts doing the USAS or USPS. And we're going to go ahead and pause the recording right now. And if you have any questions, feel free to send in a ticket. Some people email or call. If you do call, please leave a message so that we can respond and get back to you. Sometimes on our phones, the phone numbers are the generic district phone numbers, so we're not quite sure who's calling. So we just please feel free to leave a message and we'll respond as quickly as we can. Thank you and happy fiscal year end.
Clock. All right, Rhonda started the recording. So we are going to go through the checklist, and I'll bounce back and forth between the checklist and our outdated demo file just to kind of show some examples. It looks like everybody is currently muted, but if you have any questions, just feel free to unmute or throw it in the chat. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody has seen the checklist. And it's readable. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started here. So first and foremost, you have to run STRS Advance before you can initialize a July payroll. So once you get done with your June payrolls, your next step is to start working on your advance. That has to be done before you can run your July payroll. You can't even initialize. If you try to initialize, you are going to get an error. So that's what all of these, this orange box is about. Okay. If you have any employees that are retiring or resigning at the end of the fiscal year and they have board paid life insurance over $50,000, you do want to go ahead and process their NC1 amounts prior to their final pay or on their final pay. This is, just show you real fast. You can do this under current or future pay, but you would just go under payroll payments future. You're going to create NC1 is for anybody who has board paid life insurance over $50,000, regardless of whether or not they're a rehire retiree. It doesn't matter. It's an IRS rule that says if they have a, it becomes a fringe benefit, and so they want taxes on it. So if it's over $50,000 and it's board paid, then it becomes an NC1 amount. So to add that in future pay, you're just going to pull up your employee. Just add it. You can post this on their regular compensation. The description, whatever you want to put there, but the pay type is a life insurance premium. And then it's however you want to do it. I used to do a unit of 1 and a rate of whatever that insurance amount or whatever that NC1 amount equated to. So if it was $150. You cannot have the applies for retirement. If you try to save it with that, you will get an error that says it can't be subject to retirement. So you will need to uncheck that and then save it. So if they are retiring, resigning, whatever, if they only worked 6 months out of the year or whatever it ends up being, then obviously you're only going to calculate it at 6 months instead of 12 months. Step 2 has actually already been done for you. I went through everybody, and if you were still in advance from last year, I reached out to you and we dealt with everything. But I want to point it out because it is something that you really should be checking once you come out of advance, at the end of the, once you've paid off everybody who was in advance. That is under core and organization. And then up here, you have this STRS advanced configuration. Once you run advance, it's going to put your advance amount up here. And this advanced mode will be checked. And then as you run your payrolls and you post your outstanding payables, it's going to update this amount paid back. It'll update this amount paid back. And once the two equal, then it takes you out of advance. So you do want to be coming in here after every payroll and making sure that this is updating. And then once you run your final pay, probably at the end of August, when you pay out all of your contracts, this should be 0 and 0 and this be unchecked. If not, there is a way that we can go about looking for that and seeing what happened. Most of the time, it's because one of two things. You either docked somebody, or you docked somebody that was in advance, or you changed somebody's contract after you ran advance. So that is something we want to look at. It's easier to find immediately versus trying to find it almost a year later. But as of right now, everybody is out of advance mode, so everybody is good. Rhonda, I answered that question, I believe. Colleen, if you want to confirm that I answered your question. Okay. So next up is your STRS advanced reports. You can start running these now to see kind of where you're at, because it will calculate, even if you haven't run all of your pays to include the days, it will know what's going to happen. So you can start running these reports. So that is under reports and STRS advance. So reports, STRS advance. It says starting date and ending date for academic year. I always use the entire fiscal year. I've not seen any difference. This is actually what SSDT recommends too. But you have 3 reports. You have your advanced fiscal year to date report, which is going to show every person you paid that contributed to STRS. Your advanced positions report should be everybody who's going into advance. Who goes into advance? That is people who have worked all of their days by the end of June, but still have pays left on their contract. Typically, this is your teachers. It can be administrators if your administrators don't work in the month of July. Your non-advanced report is going to be those people that have work days in July. So your administrators whose contracts start on August 1st, run through July 31st, and they work 260, so they have days in July. Those are the only people that should be on your non-advanced report. If you run your non-advanced report and all of your teachers are on it and they work all of their days by the end of June, you need to fix that. Typically, this happens when your compensation start date is kind of a little wonky and it doesn't pick up the first couple of days of the contract year. There is a way to fix that. You have to do a compensation adjustment. Actually, I did for somebody earlier. You would go to their compensation, and down here at the bottom, you have these compensation adjustments, and you would want to give them the days that they were missing. So if it's only showing that they worked 180 days and it should be 182, that's what you need to do to get it up to the final number. Now, if you haven't run all of your pays to pick up all of your days in May, it's still going to pick up those days. So it's usually just the days from the beginning of the contract year. So if you run into that situation and you have questions about how to fix it, because there are reports that we can run to kind of pull out all the information so we can mass load in these compensation adjustments if it's your entire staff. And typically that's what happens if your compensation start date is a little wonky. It's usually for all of your teachers. So you can start running all of those reports right now and seeing how they are shaking out. If you have, because you can start fixing them now if you need to, like especially if you're missing those days. So again, the fiscal year to date report should have everybody that paid into STRS. And I also want to just mention, if you have questions about these reports and you want to try to maybe troubleshoot on your own, or if you're curious how things are calculated, on the SSDT, the documentation on the wiki page, It is very detailed. It's a page about STRS Advance. There's a lot of really good information on how things are calculated. So I do recommend that you coming out here if you have questions, but you can get to it by going to help and then documentation. And this will take you directly to the USPS documentation. And from here, you would click on reports, then you're going to go down to STRS reports and then click on STRS Advance, and that is the whole chapter on STRS Advance. Okay. EMIS staff reporting. You do want to clear out, if you haven't done so already, you do need to clear out, you do want to clear out last year's long-term illness and replace it with this year's long-term illness. So clear out last year's. You can go to core employee. You can add your long-term illness as onto your grid if you want to. I will tell you, you don't have to. You can just kind of clear everything without it being on here. But if you want to see who had it, you could add it using the more. And it is under state reporting and long-term illness. And then you could filter your grid for greater than 0. And so I only have one person that has long-term illness. Click on mass change, load definition, and then we have, everybody should have this because it's an SSDT1 and it's clear employee long-term illness. And then I can click on this execution mode and then I can submit and it's going to clear it. If I didn't have this on my grid and didn't have it filtered, it would still do what it needs to do. So that's going to clear last year's. And then you need to start calculating this year's long-term illness. So long-term illness is an EMIS reporting thing, and it is 15 or more consecutive absences due to the illness of a staff member or the staff member's spouse, child, or parent. And so it's 15 consecutive days or more. So if they were out for 15 days consecutively, that counts. If they were out for 15 days, came back for 2 days, and they were out for another 15 days, you would add the two 15-day stints together, making it 30. And then if they had another situation where they were out for maybe 20 days, you would add that onto it. There's not a fantastic way to get this information, but you can use the ABS 103 report to get a summary. And then from there, you can highlight the people that have more than 15 days, and then you just need to go in and determine if they were consecutive or not. So those reports are under reports, attendance reports, and then the ABS 103 is a summary. The ABS 101 is actually going to give you a day by day. So if you start out by running the ABS 103 and you put in your beginning and ending dates, and you are only going to choose, you could do sick and other. I don't know why I have other, should be doc. Sick and doc. You have options in here. You can sort it by employee name, employee number, and then active job status, so you don't get anybody that's inactive. And then you can generate this report. And you can see this is how many days they took in that time frame. So you can, and I can see that they, all of these people are daily. So this person took 15 days of sick. So in this case, I would highlight this person and say, okay, I need to investigate her a little bit more. Were they 15 consecutive days? So in order to do that, you could go to their dashboard and their attendance and look at it that way. or you could run the ABS 101 report. And you could pull up that specific employee if you wanted to. Too many Lindsays. I could add that person to my my selected employees, and this is going to give me a day report. So I can go through, okay, 13, 14, 15, okay, yep. Nope, not consecutive because they came back. So you could kind of go through here and see if they were consecutive or not. And it's nice because it has the date and the day of the week. So you can kind of go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then you would enter that on the employee screen. I'll show you where that's at real quick. It's on the employee screen. And then it's way down here, almost to the bottom under state reporting, and it's all the way to the far right under long-term illness. You just click edit and put in whatever their long-term illness was. So EMIS absences and attendance, it pulls from job calendars and the attendance screens. If you have somebody like maybe a coach that you are not putting attendance days in for, you would need to give them, you could potentially need to give them EMIS attendance days by going to core adjustments. You would create, find your employee, and then the type is going to be attendance or absence. If you have any contracted services or contractor records that need to be reported for EMIS, those get created under core EMIS entry, and then you have the CJ and the CC records. If you have questions about those, you can contact us. They're not super common, so I don't want to spend a lot of time there. You want to go ahead and update for EMIS reasons. You want to go ahead and update if you have staff that are leaving and you know they're leaving at the end of May because they are let's lead me right into it. If you know they're leaving, go ahead and update their I'll get back to that in just a second. If you know they're leaving, go ahead and go to their position screen and you're going to enter their separation date and reason. This way you go ahead and report them as separated in this fiscal year, and that way next fiscal year you can stop reporting them. We do have the USPS EMIS reporting scenarios, which is on our website. Under finance, USPS payroll, and then it says 24. I can update it with the 25. The only thing that's different is going to be these dates up here, but the rest of this remains the same. So I highly recommend printing this off and having it handy because this was a lifesaver for me when I was in payroll to figure out how in the heck I'm supposed to report all of these people depending on when they terminate and when I found out and whether or not EMIS has been reported and all of that stuff. So this is super handy. I'm going to try to go back to the chat because I know, let's see. So Colleen, hopefully that answers your question. If you know they're leaving, go ahead and do it now. EMIS doesn't close for the final staff report doesn't close until in August. I don't have the exact date for 25 yet. I'll get it though. But your EMS coordinator could do their final submission in July. So once EMS has done their final reporting for the fiscal year, that could change how you are reporting your staff that are leaving. Because if they don't get reported as separated in this fiscal year, then you have to carry them for all of next fiscal year. When you create absence within the employee, does that cover SIRS and EMIS days? Yes. As far as absences, yes. And yes, it should cover the EMIS days as well if it's going into attendance. Okay, so that's all of your pre-closing stuff you can start working on. And then next up, you have your month-end closing. This is nothing different than what you do every other month. You can generate the SIRS monthly report and the STRS monthly report. You do not have to. Those are under reports. And then you've got your SIRS monthly and your STRS monthly. As you can see, if we click on one of these, you can run this at any point in time. So I can come in here whenever I want and tell it what month I want to run it for. You're going to want to balance your payroll account as you normally would, whoever is responsible for that. Reconciling any checks. Benefit updates. So you're going to do this in accordance with your normal schedule when you typically update your sick leave accumulations. I do want to mention, only because this came up yesterday, under benefit update and protection. So this is where you typically would come to do your sick leave accruals or vacation accruals if you were doing those. But there is also the part-time sick leave accrual. This is not super common, but if you have staff that are set up to accrue sick leave based on hours worked, and that is a setup that has to be, you got to set up their leave screen appropriately. But in order to accumulate their sick leave, you would have to run this report. It does not happen from this accrual. I had a district yesterday that, given some circumstances that have happened, this hadn't happened in a while. So luckily it was caught and it's fixable, and so they're going to run it. But I just wanted to point that out, just in case you do have anybody that is supposed to be accruing sick leave that way. You do need to make this part of your monthly process of accruing sick leave. So quarter end closing, you're going to run your quarter reports just like you would any other quarter. Nothing different with the end of the fiscal year. And this just talks about all of your different balancing things. You should be, hopefully everybody has some sort of a spreadsheet that they're keeping, that they're trying to balance to based on their payrolls and their payables detail reports. So this one says all payroll item checks for the quarter should equal the total payroll items showing on the quarter report. This does not always hold true if you had payables adjustments that could impact these totals. Your total gross on your quarter report should equal the total gross of all of your payrolls you ran for the quarter. I recommend running your W-2 report at least quarterly, if not monthly. We've all been down that road before where you don't balance at the end of the year and you're finding things back in February. So run your W-2 report. It only takes a second. You're going to look for errors. You're going to balance with your spreadsheet and your quarter report. And that way, if something is off, you find it right after it happened and you'll know, I know exactly what I did. So it's way more time efficient if you run these reports, your quarter report, your W-2 report every month, and just take the 15 minutes to balance than spending hours or days at the end of the year trying to figure out what happened. I know I've said it 100 times and I'll keep saying it. So this is just, we do have a W-2 report reconciliation worksheet. If you don't have something that you're already using, some sort of balancing spreadsheet, we can send to you if you need help setting that up. But again, this is just part of balancing your taxes and your annuities based upon your outstanding payables reports and what was actually paid. If you discover any errors, if you can't find it, you can run an audit report. You would also want to look at your adjustments from core adjustments to see if anything happened there. Refunds outside of a payroll can impact that. There are a few different things. So if you're struggling to balance, you can let us know and we can help you with that as well. You do want to go to outstanding payables and make sure you have paid all of your payables since it's the end of the quarter, unless you have something yearly sitting out there, which I'm not sure anybody does. But you're just going to want to go to process outstanding payables, and this should be empty. Like I said, unless you happen to have some yearly item that you only pay once a year, that might still be sitting out here, but complete and file any quarter end submission forms. I think at this point, it's really just the 941 that is required at the end of the quarter, since I think Ohio went to just an annual reconciliation. If you want to balance your cities, just to make sure everything's looking good, you should be able to take the total gross times whatever the tax percentage is and make sure that it's correct. If you have people that are split or they have some sort of a credit, that could cause some issues there. Your ODJFS report, you will need to run that at the end of the quarter. Similar to what you do any other quarter, I actually have a note to send out the ShareBase link next Friday. So you can upload that once you have it ready. Okay, now we're to our fiscal year end reports. So these reports, I highly encourage you to run these reports in the various formats and save them somewhere to your computer, because you are going to want it at some point, because at some point, they're going to need it for GAAP conversion, or you're going to need it to generate a PO for SERS surcharge. So do run these reports. They do get generated when you close the month of June, but we find that sometimes June doesn't get closed until much later on, and it will throw off these figures. So please just do it at the end of June as part of your checklist. So first up, you have the SERS report, the SERS surcharge report. Reports, SERS reporting, SERS surcharge report, your fiscal year, and then you can decide what makes the most sense for you. If you want to sort it by fund, employee name, whatever makes sense to you. I would run it as a PDF because I think it's easy to read, but then also run it as a CSV. That way, if you need to do any sort of totals or any sort of filters on it, you have it available to do that. And you can run this as many times as you want. If you want to run it by fund and then turn around and run it by full account or employee name, by all means, you can do that and just save them. When you run these, it does not go out to the file archive, so you do want to save them after you run them. All right, next is the wage obligation. So you're going to want to run it by employees. Let's see. That's under reports. Wage obligation reports, and then you have by account and by employee. I would say run them both. And then let's see, because I don't remember. You're going to do a report as of a 6:30, and date to calculate payables through is 6:30 as well. So when you come in here, it defaults to today's date. And you can switch that to be June 30th. You can sort it by employee name and number. And then you can do either just classified, just certified, or all. I believe that this often gets used for the SCRS liability report. So for that, we suggest doing a classified one and then also running it for all appointment types. So you have both options. I've seen both be needed before. Again, I would probably run it as a PDF and a CSV. So you could run your classified, PDF, CSV, and generate, and then come back and then change it to all appointment types and run it again. Then you can jump into and do it by account. If you know exactly what they want and you're like, oh, I know I don't need to run it by employee, that's totally fine. You can just run it for what exactly you need it for. Unlike covering all bases here. So this is the same situation. You can decide how you want to run it, put in your 6:30, and then you can do classified and all appointment types. And then you have your benefit obligation report, which is very similar. Benefit obligation, you have it by account and by employee. You can change your sort. You can do all leave types or just sick if that's the only thing you need. You can choose whether you want both active, inactive, or just active. Exclude ineligible positions, report as of 6:30. If you do not select anything, it will just run for all appointment types, and then you can generate that. Again, you can do CSV and a PDF version. This is the one that kind of gets a little wonky after you start inactivating. If you archive compensations prior to running this one can kind of get messed up. So do run these at the end of the fiscal year. Okay, so that is kind of the end of your pre-closing. Once all of that is done, now it's ready. Now you're ready to really focus on your SCRS advance, making sure that it is clean. So employees flagged as full-time must have at least 120 service days to be granted a full year of service credit. If they are part-time, which is marked on the 450 screen, their credit will be in accordance with the STRS decision tree. We'll get to the merge files. So a couple of notes here. If you know that you are going to pay an employee out early, so you're not going to continue to stretch their pay over the summer, you're going to pay them out on June 15th, June 30th, whatever, go ahead and update, or if you're going to pay them out in July, go ahead and update their compensation before you run advance. Also, if you know before you run advance that you have to dock people that are going to be in advance, what you can do is you can enter those docks into future pay, then run advance, and it will pick up those docks in order to calculate the correct advance amount for those employees. And then after you run advance, you can delete those docs until you're actually ready to process them. That just kind of helps prevent the issue I talked about earlier with still being in advance at the end of the year because you talked to somebody. So we already talked about the reports. Your starting academic year, 7/1, ending 6/30, the 3 different reports, and it does we list out what it is reporting. So again, the fiscal year to date is anybody who's paid into STRS. Advance are those people that are going into advance because they have worked all of their days by June 30th. Non-advance should only be the people who have July work days on their calendar on their compensation. A couple of things you want to check, the service credit. So let me see if I still have it open.
Next time I waited, sent them all. I sent math science sense of study. Now he's
Rhonda, can you mute, please? Thank you. So this is what the fiscal year to date report looks like. So right here is where you have your credit. Please ignore all the nonsense that's in here, but 0% would be correct for a rehired retiree. They do not get any more credit. So if this happens to be a Y, then this should be a 0. But if this is a 0 and this is an N, there's a problem. You want to look at their number of days. So their number of days on this report is going to be the number of days in their contract minus any dock days. So if somebody, again, this is demo data, so it's kind of junk, but if their contract is 182 days, then this should be 182. If they were docked for 2 of those days, this is going to show up as 180. If they worked their 182, but then they had 5 extended days, then this is going to be 187 if you put in their attendance days. So it will also pick up if you went to their attendance and you put in an actual attendance days for their extended days or any extra days they worked. We'll pick that up as well. Their earnings there's a whole on SSDT. There's a whole section on here about how it calculates earnings. Essentially, it should be their contract for the year. If they have pickup on pickup included in compensation, then their earnings will be inflated because it recognizes that they have the increased compensation. If they are an administrator who crosses fiscal years, so their contract is August to July, that can also kind of give you some really weird earnings on right here, but typically for most staff, this is going to be actually what they earned in the fiscal year. The non-tax deposit / pickup is the amount of the 591 and or 691 paid. So that is this amount right here. So this is what has been paid. The next column is the advance amount. So that is the amount, the STRS contribution that you are going to submit over the summer for that employee. And then this is going to be the total. So it's going to be this plus, this column plus this column should equal this column. You probably should not have anything in these last 3, these tax amounts, because I don't believe any of our districts tax this. Everybody is pre-tax. So these should be empty. If there's something in there, call and we'll figure it out. And then the rehire retiree, that's if they are a retired retiree, this should be a yes. If it is not, please contact us because there are some corrections that do need to be made for that. So this is some notes about how to balance the fiscal year to date report. I will tell you that last year I created a little spreadsheet to help with this, and I tested it out again this year, and it's still held true this year. So if you would like that spreadsheet, let me know and I can send it to you. It just kind of walks you through different reports to run and figures to plug in. There is also a way that you can balance this non-tax advance amount. Again, that is the amount of STRS, the contributions you're going to submit to STRS over the summer. So a very broad overview is if you take the employee and you take their per pay times the number of pays you're going to pay over the summer, so probably 4, maybe 5 in some cases, and multiply that by 14%. Ideally, that's going to be this figure right here. There are some caveats to that if they have pickup on pickup, or if they maybe have, you're paying them out early or something. But you can run different reports from your compensation grid and do some calculations if you want to balance that. So once you have everything balanced, we still recommend requesting a backup from us. I will say that last year it wasn't as important, but the year before that, we used those backups like crazy to get certain reports. But the reason we recommend it is if for some reason you find out after you've run your first July payroll that your STRS advance was incorrect, we can use that backup to create a correct report, and I have done that twice. So if once your STRS advance is balanced and you feel good with it, send us a help desk ticket and ask us for a backup. Do not proceed until we tell you we have your backup. Sometimes we might contact you and say, hey, when was your STRS advance balanced? Because we will sometimes just pull, because we back you up at 11 p.m. and 11 a.m. anyway. So sometimes we'll just pull those ones if you were balanced at the last backup. But if you want a backup, put in a help desk ticket and do not proceed until we tell you you're good to proceed. So once you've done that, we tell you you're good to go, you can actually run your STRS advance report. So that is, so that's the generate submission file. Generating the submission file does not submit it to STRS. So that is simply generating the file. And I put a note on here. This step only creates the submission file. The actual submission takes place in step 34. So you're going to generate that file. You're going to save it somewhere on your desktop. If you have a third-party STRS file that you need to merge, this is not super common, but if you do, that entity should get you their file. Then you would merge it by coming down here, and you would upload your advanced submission file here, and then your merge file here, and then you would generate the STRS merge file. That would be the report that you would upload here. So if you don't merge, the file that gets generated right here, you're going to upload here, you're going to choose that file, and then you're going to submit it to STRS. That is actually the submission process. If you generated a merged file, then this would create the merge file and you would upload the merge file here. Hopefully that makes sense. Once you actually have submitted your file to STRS, you can verify it by going to core organization and you're going to look for the timestamp. So back under core organization, you have your STRS configuration. And when you submit it, not only are you going to have an advance amount here, and this box is going to be checked, but this will say submitted to STRS, and it's going to have a date and time stamp. And it should be the date and time that you submitted it. So if you come in here and it still says 2024, you didn't submit it. It says 2025, you should be good. I realize now that this is actually step 33. So there's just an image of where you would look for that submitted timestamp. Once you've submitted it, we do ask that you just let us know. We do kind of track when districts submitted, just so we know when people have are complete. That way, if we're getting close and we know your payroll's coming up, we'll send you a little, hey, do you need any help? So just let us know that you submitted it. And then you're ready to run your July payroll. So before you run your July payroll, you are going to create the July posting period and make it current. And then you will close June when it makes sense. So some districts keep June open or the prior month open until they've run their first pay in July, and that's okay. You do just want to close June as soon as possible so it generates all those reports. If you wait too long, if you don't close June until September, these reports will be very wrong. When you are in STRS Advance, you cannot modify the position number. So do not modify that. You also cannot run, you can't process certain pay types like regular or irregular. And any of these pay types can impact your amount paid back. So that's that doc that we talked about earlier. It's not, you can use doc, you just need to know that it's going to impact your amount paid back and you won't come out of advance naturally. We'll have to force it. So you can check for the completion of STRS Advanced. We did talk about this. So once you run your last pay for the fiscal year 25 contract, you want to go into core organization and you want to make sure that the advance amount and the amount paid back are both 0 and the advance mode is unchecked. If any of those are not true, we do have some instructions through here on how you can check that, but you can also call us and we can talk through it. It's almost always a doc or a contract change after advance was ran. So try to do that before you run advance. For the new fiscal year, we've kind of already talked about all of this prior to, but you want to create your job calendars for the upcoming school year. You want to start working on your new contracts, using new contract maintenance. There's instructions on how you can work with non-contract compensations. I think most people, if you have non-contracts, you're typically not creating new contracts every year. You're just maybe using mass change to update the rate. A couple of things just to note, if you need to convert your personal leave to sick leave, you're going to do that when it makes sense with your district and your timeline. That is under benefit update and projection. So you have processing, benefit update and projection. So you have your reset personal leave. So this just resets it. So if it's a use or lose situation, you can come in here and you can select your different pay groups and you can tell it the date that you want to actually process that. This up here will tell you whether it's a projection or an actual. So you've got projection. And so by running this report, it's just going to give you an idea of what's going to happen. And then when you change it to reset report, it will actually reset their personal leave. If you need to convert it to pay, You have the convert personal leave to pay option through here. If you need to convert it personal to sick leave, I do want to point out in here that you have this little box right here that says include partial days and hours. If you do not check that box, if somebody has 2.5 personal days, it's only going to convert 2 of those to sick leave. So if you want the full 2.5 to convert to sick leave, you want to make sure you check that box. If you convert to pay, does it convert based on their compensation rate? Yes, but can you change that? Okay, so it looks like you do have a flat rate. So you can use up to 4 different rates. Honestly, I have to work with you on this one because I can probably count on one hand how many times I've actually done this. But you do have options in here. So you have different rates, but I'm not totally sure how you tell it which rate to use. Or you can use their rate from their position. I do have one district that we use this to get figures, but then we actually mass load in because they pay it. This automatically goes through job 1, their regular job, and they pay it on a separate job. So we use this to kind of get the figures, and then we mass load it via attendance, absence, and port. So yeah, Colin, we can work on that together. Run some different options. So we talked about that. Resetting your vacation leave. If you're a district that gives lump sum vacations, you want to make sure you're getting that done in time. That unfortunately, there's no easy button there. That's just a matter of going to their I'll get there. Accumulations and adding in how many ever vacation days you want to give them. So you would just come to, I went to core leaves and accumulations, and I can just create and give them how many ever vacation days. That's it. I would do that for this one. I think I covered everything in the chat, but if not, please let me know. If you have never done STRS Advance before and you just sat here and listened to that and you're like, what? I don't understand. Reach out to us. We are more than happy to kind of walk you through it. Otherwise, the only other thing I want to mention is in the month of June, Rhonda and I both have vacations scheduled. So we will be short-staffed for the majority of June. So if you have questions, please just put in a help desk ticket so we can kind of prioritize and go in order of, you know, who contacted us first, and that way nobody gets missed, because sometimes the emails and phone calls can kind of get buried. So if you put in help desk ticket, we'll get to you as soon as we can. That's all I have, folks, unless you have questions. All right. Well, everybody have a great rest of your Thursday and have a good Memorial Day.
Thanks, Tanya. Have a great day.
You too.